let's learn something really quick.
If you got the time, absolutely. And you got the discipline, there's no question about it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great practice to put into your everyday life, you guys.
You generally regret the things you don't do, not the things you did do. Let me say it that way.
Mic drop. This was just awesome. I love meeting my guests in person, and it's a whole nother animal, and the energy is just electric. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. What is good, everyone? This is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, bring you incredible guests from all over the world, so sit back, relax, and tune in. My next guest is a clarity and decision-making expert, coach, and innovator. He is also an author. Please welcome Mike Fink. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here, Deanna.
It's a pleasure to have you. When people are from around the world, I always like them to tell the audience where they're from. So where are you joining us from today?
Right now, I'm in Montreal, in Canada. Beautiful, beautiful city. But I'm originally from Europe, so the accent that you're hearing is probably more of a French accent than a Canadian French.
Yeah. Well, Montreal here has got great food too.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Actually, after New York City is the second city in the world with the highest number of restaurants per capita.
Oh, I didn't know that. I used to travel a lot in Canada with my previous life with my late husband. Montreal was on our list to go visit for business. And I was looking forward to it because I heard about all the great food, but we never made it there. Anyways. So we could talk about that another time. Let's get into what you're all about. Now, I love this. Clarity and decision-making expert and coach. What made you want to make that your focus as a coach?
So I say that the process that I'm about to share today is the result of 2 decades of expertise and 5 years of misery. Oh. Because as you probably know better than I do, your wounds are your gifts, right? So I went through life. I've been an expert in the field of personal development for 2 decades. And the second decade, I was into a business relationship. I got into a 50-50 business relationship with a gentleman. And the first 5 years were okay. But the last 5 years were terrible. And what happened is that as the market was changing, we started to understand that we needed to shift focus. We needed to make new decisions. And this is when it became very apparent that we had different values, that we had different visions that were actually very, very conflicting. And the relationship started degrading very fast. We started having more and more arguments up to the point that we're screaming to one another in front of our top-level employees, and I felt ashamed of after that. But that's how bad it was. And it kept going like that. But the thing that struck me, in a way with hindsight, is that those 5 years were terrible, but the main problem that I was facing wasn't so much that it was a bad relationship. It was a different one. It was the indecision of what to do about it.
Yeah.
Do I stay or do I go? Is it me or is it him? Is it the relationship? Is he right? Am I wrong? And I was always wondering in the back of my mind what to do. I wasn't sure because I was afraid of committing a mistake that I would regret forever. Well, what if he's right and I'm wrong and I decide to break up the relationship and then it will be terrible? Or what if I'm right, but still I will have to sell an asset to buy him out and then I will have to start from scratch and it may not work? All those thoughts. And if I had not gone through the pain of indecision myself, I would not understand how taxing, how debilitating it could be on a person's life because it can affect your mental focus. It can affect your emotions, whether you're stressed, anxious, depressed. It affects your sleep, your energy level, your self-esteem, your ability to work, your social interactions, your relationships. It affects your eating habits, your health habits, your mental health, your physical health. And also, and I'm talking now about, parents or women who are considering divorce, it also affects the relationship that they have with their kids. Because there's always this question in the back of the mind, should I stay or should I go? And it makes it so that they are not able to be fully present with other people. And that's where I was. I was in this turmoil. I was having sleepless nights. I was having anxiety. I burned out, literally. I mean, for 6 months, I had to take 6 months off total. Tried to recover, and I didn't.
Wow.
And it kept going only worse. And this was indecision, mind you, not because he was a terrible person, because I'm not blaming him. It's just that we're not a good fit.
Right.
And what happened is that I hit my 50th birthday, and that's when I did a life review. And when I looked at my life and at all the decisions that I had made, I figured, you know what? I got most of the big decisions right, except for two of them, and one was having gotten into this relationship. And the reason I got the other decisions right, but not this one, was that I had applied a process that I had developed over time, and for some reason, I didn't do it before committing to this relationship. But when I became aware of that, I decided to apply my own medicine. And when I did, I went from being confused, anxious, burned out to having this clarity. All of a sudden, my mind was aligned with my heart, with my gut. I knew exactly what the right thing was for me to do, which was to end the relationship. And it was challenging. As I said, I had to sell an asset to buy him out. There were difficulties, but I had this deep peace of mind, deep knowledge that I was doing the right thing, and I could live with this decision without having any regrets. And it allowed me to figure things out, step by step.
Yeah.
And then there's one more thing that happened, which was kind of a sign from the universe. At that time, after I finally parted ways with him, my spouse's brother found himself in a difficult situation. I found out that he had been confused, anxious for the previous 2 years because he was a medical student, and he needed to make some very important and long-term impacting decisions about his future and career, and he was at a complete loss. So I said, you know what? Let me help you. I have this new and improved process that I've been using for myself. Let me see if I can help you. And in 2 hours, Deanna, I took him from being confused, anxious, lost, to having absolute clarity and knowing exactly what to do. And he told me, Mike, it was as if I had been in a pitch dark room, bumping myself against furniture. And now you just flip the switch, the light is on, and I see and I know where to go.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized, okay, I found something important, revolutionary. I need to share it with the world. And I completely shifted my life mission. And then I wanted, okay, if I can help people make complex, high cost of failure decisions, meaning that if you get it wrong, it's going to be very, very costly and painful. Well, what are some decisions I can help people with? And the most natural one was the divorce decision, because I kind of went through a divorce. It was a business divorce.
Right.
The pain of it
very similar.
Neutral, right?
Yeah.
And then, this is one of the most difficult decisions a human being can make. And I decided to work with women specifically because 69% of divorces, at least in North America, in the US, are initiated by women. And also women, in my experience, are more open to seeking help with it. So now I really help women who are afraid of making a mistake they will regret when they're considering divorce, get absolute clarity and certainty in less than 30 days so they can express their inner peace and move toward a happier life.
Within 30 days, that's a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's why I'm so excited to share this process with the world. It works pretty, really well.
And so now how long have you been doing this for?
So I've been doing this since 2021. And as I said, it's been a total shift of my life mission, of my career. And I went and helped many women. And then I also wrote a book based on that. It's called Divorce Decision Decoded, that really takes people step by step in terms of, number one, give them hope that there's a solution. And also it explains how it works. And I'm going to share those steps during this interview today.
Excellent. I love it. Well, I mean, let's go. Let's do it. You said you were going to ask me questions and take me through it. So I'm ready.
Yeah. So first of all, there's an important concept that people need to realize before they make a decision. And most women have been stuck in indecision for years. And the first thing you need to realize is that if you are stuck in indecision for a very high cost of failure decision, you are not at liberty to make that decision. Now, let me explain. We think we can make that decision, but the reality is that our biology, our brain is programmed to keep us stuck in the status quo. And let me show you a prop here. So I have a brain. You can see it on camera, but your listeners, they can just imagine that the brain is made like an ice cream cone that has 3 scoops of ice cream, one on top of the other. And the first scoop of ice cream at the bottom of the brain is what is called the old brain, the reptilian brain, the primal brain. Have you heard those terms before, Diana?
Yes. Okay. Yes, I have.
Okay, so this is the oldest part of the brain. Then the second scoop of ice cream, the one on top, is the emotional brain. And the last one is the most recent one, is the neocortex, is the rational brain. So why am I bringing this up? Because your primal brain is in charge of your survival. It says, my number one job is to protect you. So when you think about making decisions, we make decisions all day long, and we think we have a pretty good grasp at how to make decisions. But the divorce decision is very different on several fronts. Number one, it is a decision that will affect not only you, but also the people around you.
Yeah.
Your kids.
Yeah.
Your family. Your spouse. Your friends, right? It's going to be a decision that's going to impact you on multiple fronts. Emotional, psychological, social, professional. It's going to be a decision that is going to affect you most likely for years to come, if not for the rest of your life. And finally, it's a decision that is pretty much irreversible. Yes, technically you could say it will go back with, but once you've divorced, that's it. So you don't even have the benefit of trial and error. Right. And that makes it such a high cost of failure decision that your brain goes, hey, Mike, or hey, Deanna, unless you have absolute certainty that this is the right decision, meaning to divorce, I'm going to keep you stuck in the status quo. When in doubt, wait it out. Because the devil that you know is better than the devil you don't.
Right.
Especially for divorce, where it's true in general in life. Before it gets better, it usually gets worse. The analogy that I use is, if you think about renovating a bathroom, well, step number one is to tear the bathroom down. Yeah. It's going to get messy. It's going to get dusty. But then you'll be able to rebuild a more beautiful one.
Yeah.
So divorce, it's scary. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And if you get it wrong, it's going to be horrible. So your brain says, no. I know that you can survive in the short term if you stay stuck in this relationship, even if it's a miserable one. Why? Because you've been surviving it so far. And at least the known is better than the unknown. So on the other hand, if a person were to make a decision, that's when they would have to confront the consequences. Well, they will be in a position to be blamed by their kids, by themselves, by their spouse, by their friends. And if they got it wrong, it will just go downhill from there. Whereas if you're still thinking about it, technically speaking, you're off the hook.
Right.
I'm still thinking about it. Maybe things will get better. There's always hope, and human beings have infinite capacity for denial. So step number one is really understanding that in order for you to actually make a decision, whether to save your relationship or to move forward, you need to have absolute certainty, because otherwise your brain is programmed to keep you stuck. Don't delude yourself.
Right.
Your primal brain is in charge. You need to convince it. Does that make sense, Deanna?
Yes, makes perfect sense.
Okay. So the next step after that is, how do we get certainty? And it's really by really understanding and having clarity about your relationship, because certainty comes from clarity. And step number one is very simple, but few people do it. It is gathering all the pieces of the puzzle.
Sure.
Imagine having 1,000 pieces jigsaw puzzle, but you have 200 pieces in your hand only. How likely are you going to be to solve it?
Not likely.
I know it's a rhetorical question, but yet this is what most people do. And when I say gather all the pieces of the puzzle, it means really understanding all the things that are important to you in your ideal partner. So maybe it is that you want somebody who has a great sense of humor. Maybe you want somebody who is physically affectionate. Maybe it's somebody who likes to travel or who is a good provider. When you start really thinking about all of those things, they actually gather, and there's a large number of them. What's your guess, by the way? How many things do you think are typically important for most people in a relationship?
How many things?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. I feel like...
And I'm catching you off guard, I realize.
I feel like this is a trick question. Well, I mean, I think there could be like hundreds of things that would be important.
Yeah, if you go into the minute details,
right.
It could be. In my experience, most people have between 20 to 30 things that are important to them.
Sure.
And usually when I say that, there's a lot of people say, wow, that sounds like a lot. But really, if you take the time to dig down and write things, all the things, that's 20 to 30. And if you think that's a lot, it's a sure sign you're most likely missing critical pieces. So number one is, let's have all the pieces of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
The next step is to make sure that you define those pieces properly, that it's not only, oh, I want somebody who's physically affectionate, but what does it mean to you? How would the third party know that this person that you are interacting with is physically affectionate? Because if you are vague, then you don't know for sure if it's being fulfilled or not. But if you say, no, for me, physically affectionate means that every morning when we wake up, we kiss. It means that when we walk on the street, we hold hands. It means that we're watching a movie on Netflix, we're hugging each other. And by the way, there's no right or wrong. I'm just making this up. But the more precise you are, as if you were a Hollywood movie director, who is where doing what, the better it is. Because the more clarity you'll have about the single pieces, that then it will enable you to try and order those things. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Okay. So I have these 2 Rubik cubes here in my hand, and for people who are listening, I'm holding one that has all the colors jumbled, and on the other hand, I'm holding one that is perfectly solved. All the colors are aligned.
Yes.
And Deanna, I have a question. If you look at the Rubik cube that is all jumbled,
yes,
are there any pieces in terms of the smaller cubes or even in terms of the color stickers? Are there any pieces missing to solve the cube?
I don't think so.
Correct. They're all there. All you need to do is put those pieces in the proper sequence, right? You turn the faces of the cube in a specific sequence to get the solved cube.
Right.
And what I have discovered is that we already have all the elements within us to make the proper decision. Okay. We need to become aware of them. But then once you have them, all you need to do is put them in the proper sequence to get clarity. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes sense.
Okay. So how do you do that? What is the proper sequence? The first thing that you need to do is to rank your values. I call it, by the way, the first step, I call that value mapping, meaning you create the map of all the things that are important to you. And the second step, I call that categorized ranking. What does it mean? It means that you take all the 20 to 30 things that are important to you and you put them in order from the most important one to the least important one. And it's not easy. That's why I developed a step-by-step process, because people get confused when they have 3 or 4 things. Imagine 20 to 30. You keep changing. But once you apply a very structured process to order those things, it also enables you to make a very powerful distinction, which is, okay, now that I know from most important to least important, what is really essential in my relationship versus optional? I'd love to have it, but I can live without.
Sure.
And that is a crucial distinction, because it allows you to understand what it is that you can compromise on and not compromise on. That's why quite often I say that people who go and do marriage counseling, in a way, they're kind of putting the cart before the horse, because if you don't have clarity, what are the essential things that you should be working on? You may be working on things that are optional, not the real needle movers, and it can actually make things worse, because if your spouse makes efforts and makes changes on things that turn out to be optional, then you'll feel worse, right? Because now...
Great point. That's a great point. Yeah.
I'm still not happy, but for him, and now I feel more guilt.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect sense.
Okay. So it's really crucial to have this distinction. And I'm going to share an example, with you of a story. I had this client, her name was Kate, and she had been struggling for 5 long years in terms of, should I stay or should I go? And her husband was not a monster. And by the way, let me make a small digression, but how do you get certainty for you to know whether to divorce or not with your brain? Because a lot of women are stuck in uncertainty, in indecision, but I'm sure that some women who decided to divorce and that's it, they were done, period, and it was a done deal, right?
Right.
So how come some of them were able to do it and not some others? Well, the ones who were able to do it is because they had certainty that it was the right thing to do. And usually it is because of one of the things that I call an instant deal breaker. And by that, it's highly subjective, but I mean something that was so unacceptable for the other person that they were done. For example, maybe it was their spouse cheating. Maybe it was their spouse becoming physically abusive. Maybe it was their spouse stealing or taking the money that was put aside for the kids' college and they lost it all gambling, or they start doing drugs, or something that was so unacceptable for the other person that their primal brain had the certainty that, yes, it's worse if you stay in this relationship and you move forward. But most women don't have that certainty. In fact, a lot of them tell me, you know, Mike, I wish my husband was a jerk. Sounds funny when you hear that, but what they really mean is, I wish he was such a terrible person that I could have the certainty to know that would be the right thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So this woman, Kate, was caught with her husband. She had been struggling for 5 years in terms of what to do. And when I guided her to not only identify all the pieces of the puzzle, but to order them between essential and optional, it turned out that she had 22 things that were important to her, and 17 were essential to her. And out of those total 22, only 7 were not fulfilled. So you could think, well, that's not bad. You know, it's 70% of the things that she was looking for. But when you looked with that distinction in terms of what's essential versus optional, turned out that all those 7 things were in the essential area.
Wow. Yeah.
Worse than that, 4 out of 7 were 4 out of her top 5. And when she had that big aha moment, she could finally put words into everything that she had felt.
Sure.
She could understand why she had been miserable. She could understand why she had been keeping going back and forth between should I stay or should I go? Because her husband was not a bad person. It's not about judging whether he's good or bad. It's just that for some of the things that were most important to her, essential, he did not fulfill them. And then I guided her through a process to assess, do you think that your husband can make enough changes to improve the relationship to a level that would be acceptable enough for you? And the answer for her was that she realized that 7 things out of her essentials was just too much change, too many things for her husband to change on.
Yeah.
To be realistic. He would have needed what I call a personality transplant. All of a sudden, he makes 7 significant long-term changes, right? He would not be the same person. But it took her that level of understanding to really feel at peace with, you know what, now I know that it's not about him, it's not about me, it's just not a good fit, but this relationship will not work long-term. Does that make sense?
Yes, makes sense. Yeah, but I feel like these lists should be made before when people start dating.
Such a great comment, Deanna. In fact, I think that the next book that I will write is about how to deal with, it will be Wedding Cold Feet Decoded, because there are so many women that I work with who now are considering divorce, who tell me, I kind of felt that something was off at the beginning, and yet they didn't have that level of clarity. And if they did, they could have avoided. But again, it's the same kind of trap, because if they didn't have the certainty that they were getting into the wrong relationship, or that their spouse was not the person that they would want to be with for the rest of their life, it takes a lot of courage to call off a wedding, right? I mean, it's a high cost of failure decision.
Yeah.
So again, when in doubt, they're primarily stuck. So your comment is really, really good. And in fact, one of the things that I share both inside my book, Divorce Decision Decoded, and when I work with my clients is that once you have that clarity, it not only enables you to know what to do about the relationship, which, by the way, it's not always I should divorce. Sometimes it enables you to really understand, okay, no, I understand that those are the things that are essential to me. And now I can see exactly the points of leverage where I need to focus on to see if it can work, right? And not just randomly try to work on other things. And it also provides you with what I call the blueprint for your happy, perfect, fulfilling relationship. So that if people decide to divorce, then they will have the blueprint to follow so that they don't make the same mistakes in the future, and they increase their chances of quote unquote attracting the perfect spouse.
No.
So your comment is right on. Absolutely.
So when you work with some, we're starting to get a little close here in time. When you work with these women and you take them through your technique, your process, which I love. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's something that we should start like when you start dating. But if they're married and you start working with this, what about the husband and his list of essentials? And because the husband has to have a list too, right? So if the husband and wife are at a disconnect, and the wife's coming to you to understand what she should do, and if she's saying, okay, I want to salvage my marriage because he meets most of my essentials, what about the husband? Because
that's a great question. Now, typically, if a woman is considering divorce but hasn't made up her mind, it's because she's the one so unhappy that she's considering divorce, but not the husband, right? The husband.
Sure.
Sometimes I have people who say, oh, for my husband, nothing is wrong because all his needs are being met, but not mine. And however much I'm trying to communicate, it's not working. So
Yeah.
that's more of a typical situation. Now, should both spouse in an ideal situation understand their values and their essentials with substance?
Yes.
Yes. And that would make for a much more productive relationship. In the case of the woman that I work with, it's usually there's this sort of imbalance. And it's first for them to understand whether it's about them, whether it's about the relationship, whether the relationship can
Yeah.
or not. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes total sense. I love it. I think you've got a great technique, and I think that so it only takes 30 days, you said, right, for them to figure this out.
Yeah. Now, there's one more piece of information.
Oh, okay,
Super
okay,
powerful.
okay.
I know. Okay. And this is one that really makes the difference between this technique and all the other ones, because I kind of gave you the steps to get certainty, but it's more of a logical certainty.
Sure.
And I told you that in terms of your brain, the part that you need to convince is also your primal brain and emotional brain, right? Because especially your primal brain is in charge of your survival, is the real gatekeeper of your decision.
Sure.
But how do you convince your brain? And I'm going to give you a statistic and you'll see why it is relevant. The primal brain, the old brain, was formed 500 million years ago. The emotional brain, that's the second scoop of ice cream on top of it, was formed about 200 million years ago. The last part of the brain, the neocortex, the rational part of the brain, the one in charge of logic, of reasoning, and of language, was formed 2 to 3 million years ago. Now, the reason I'm giving you the statistics is because it means that your primal brain and emotional brain were formed before we developed language.
Wow.
And that means, Deanna, pay attention,
Yes.
that your primal brain and emotional brain do not understand words.
Yeah.
Crazy. Let me ask you this. What do all traditional solutions, whether it's talk therapy, marriage counseling, talking to a lawyer, talking to your friends, what do all these solutions have in common?
That's all language.
Yes. And language addresses only 1/3 of your brain. It's like trying to run a race, hopping only on one leg. You are so much faster if you can run with both your legs, right? That means that you need to involve also your primal brain and your emotional brain. But how do you do that? If language doesn't work, then what is the way to do that? So let me lead you through a thought experiment. Do you have any children, Deanna?
No.
Okay. But you're married, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I would assume that if you were to find out that your husband is cheating on you, I would assume that you would be pretty upset. Is that a fair statement?
Oh yeah. He'd be
Okay.
in trouble.
Okay. Now, let's do this thought experiment and your listeners can do it at the same time. I'm going to give you 4 different scenarios in which you will learn about the same exact piece of information. Okay. And let's just assess how differently you feel with each one. Scenario number 1, somebody just comes and tells you, Deanna, your husband is cheating on you, but you don't know what the person with whom he's cheating with, you don't know what they look like. You'd be pretty upset, correct?
I would question that because I know, but yeah, I'd be upset if someone came to me and said that. But
Okay.
I don't know if I believe it 100%. So
Okay, interesting. Second scenario, somebody comes and tells you, your husband is cheating with this other person, and this time it's not a friend of yours, but you do know what the other person looks like. How upset are you? Less upset, just as upset, or even?
oh yeah, I would confront him right away.
Okay. Third scenario, a person comes to you and they don't tell you anything. They show you pictures of your husband being intimate with another woman. Mm-hmm. Are you less upset, just as upset, or more upset?
More upset, obviously, because you were seeing proof of it.
Last scenario, you come home and you open the door of the living room and you see your husband being intimate with another woman.
You better run.
Upset. Okay.
They both better run.
Okay. So it sounds kind of obvious when I put it this way, but let's think about this for a second. It is the exact same piece of information. Your husband is cheating on you. The difference between all the scenarios that I used is your ability to visualize. The first time you said, I just heard it, and you even said it, I may not even believe it.
Right.
Because the primal brain and your emotional brain feel it and believe it when they see it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's not words, it's the visual communication.
Right.
And that's why this is such an important thing to understand, because the third step is, once I have led my clients through having all the pieces of the puzzle and then understanding what's essential versus optional, then it's time to decode the relationship with a visual format. Meaning I take all their values and put that in a visual way so that the essential values have a different color than from the optional ones. And we start assessing each value one by one, whether it's being fulfilled with color coding, with symbols that your primal brain can immediately understand. And the result is that all of a sudden, you have a holistic assessment of the health of your entire relationship. You don't even need to look at the words from a logical point of view anymore. You can see, wow, all the essentials, they are in the red zone. Now I get why I was so miserable. Or, you know what? Not too bad. It's in the blue zone. Or, wow, it's all in the green zone. And the reason this is so important is because it communicates with all parts of your brain. And I need to share this client story because it was so dramatic. Kim had been struggling pretty much since the beginning of her wedding. And for the previous 3 years, she had been she was lost in confusion and indecision because she had met another man and she had an affair. And I didn't judge her. People make the best possible choices at the time they make them. So there was no judgment. But her grown-up son knew about the affair. He had asked her to make a decision. The other man had left his wife and was waiting for Kim to divorce. But she was completely devastated because she knew that whatever decision she would make, she would hurt people.
Right.
Wow. She didn't want to break her family. She was hoping she could save her marriage. I led her through the steps, and when we assessed her relationship with her spouse on the merits of just the spouse, it became really clear that 9 out of 14 essentials were all red. It would never work. And there was a huge aha moment. I know this will never work. And when we assessed the other men, it was all green on the essentials and on the optionals. And it wasn't wishful thinking because she had made the definitions of the values before in a detached way. But it's only when she saw that contrast side by side between all the red and the green that it became obvious to her what the right decision was. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. With that being said, Mike, where can people find you, connect with you, and learn more of working with you?
Thank you. So if you want to get absolute clarity, you can go to getabsoluteclarity.com.
There you go.
So it's 3 words, getabsoluteclarity.com. This is where you can find my book, Divorce Decision Decoded. This is where you can find out how I work with my clients and how I can help you. And you'll have more information there. Getabsoluteclarity.com is the best way to get in touch with me or to get the book or find out more about what I do.
Excellent. You guys can put that link in the show notes. So if you connected with Mike, go ahead and click that link and check him out. Purchase the book. And if you need more clarity in your marriage, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm sure he'd be happy to help. Mike, this is the part of the show where I like to ask for last words of wisdom or advice. What would you like to leave with us today?
Clarity is the root to everything. And please, whether it's with me or without me, just know that the status quo is a deadly trap. Maybe not deadly, but it's a terrible trap that will steal years of your life. So whatever you do, seek to get clarity one way or another. Do not just think, I'll think about it and maybe things will get better.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful because time is fleeting. We only have one life to live. So make sure that you are living with joy, purpose, gratitude, and love, right? Absolutely. Mike, thank you so much for explaining your process and taking us through a very vivid explanation of how we can get clarity in our lives, specifically when it comes to whether to get divorced or stay in our marriage. I think it was absolutely genius. So we appreciate you.
Thanks. I'm very, very happy to have been on your show, Deanna.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
You're welcome. You guys, this is your host, Deanna Radulescu with Label Free Podcast. To live your best life, you must live label free. As always, don't forget to subscribe, follow, rate, review, comment, share, all those good things. And I'll be back soon with more dynamic guests.